Dobry Borowski. Well, we're talking about Mad Men today, not the American Movie Classics TV series, whose new season I'm eagerly anticipating, but the Mad Men of the Weapons of Mass Destruction Hall of Infamy. Looking at the fate of Muammar Gaddafi seems to be a lesson for our gallery of nuclear madmen, doesn't it? One down and Kim Il-jong and Ahmadinejad of Iran to go. But to those of you with a grasp on reality, you already have a good idea the truth isn't quite as conveniently stupid as NATO propaganda releases. In fact, the lesson said madmen get from Gaddafi's fate is not to make deals with the West. Gaddafi laid down his weapons of mass destruction and vowed to walk the path of peace, and all seemed forgiven, even the Lockerbie tragedy, until the West decided it was time to get rid of him, and then all the agreements with the West weren't worth the toilet paper they were signed on. Nothing was really forgiven after all. Not only were past sins like Lockerbie and the assassinations of U.S. servicemen in Berlin dragged out of mothballs, perfectly preserved, but new ones were invented. The ever-useful preemptive strike to prevent humanitarian catastrophe. Always good for a few piles of corpses or two. And after the mothball atrocities and invented scenarios, out came the NATO war machinery, and old Muammar really had no deterrent left, because he'd foolishly destroyed them in the naive belief that he could trust the West's good intentions and moral word and rule of law. Unfortunately for the West, its other professional adversaries already know its double-face all too well. This not only drives their desire to acquire weapons of mass destruction, but Gaddafi's fate is an object lesson in the untrustworthiness of the self-appointed guardians of the world community. Iran, for instance, well knows that his much-hated Shah was kept on his throne by direct overthrow of the democratic nationalist Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953, just to keep the oil supply on tap. By keeping the Shah happy as a kid at Christmas with high-dollar war toys subsidized by the U.S. taxpayer. And that if Iran lowers its guard and succumbs to Western ploys for peace, the West will crank up the regime change machinery once again, and something very much like the current satellite regime of Iraq will be empowered. It could only be an improvement, you say? Only it's not your call. You have no more right to decide their future than you did fucking up their past. And I doubt that you people calling the loudest for regime change really gives a tinker's jolly damn for the people of Iran outside of their obedience to your world dominance. The same with North Korea, which has even more reason for distrust of your self-professed nobility. North Korea already learned the lessons of devastation the hard way. Except for one building, the entire capital city of Pyongyang was destroyed, and the North Korean government and society literally driven underground. The U.S. Sabre jet fighters and B-29 Super Fortresses laid waste to everything productive, including the Chosin Reservoir, with the express intent of flooding the country's rice harvest and reducing it to starvation. This was intentional. And Kim Il-sung is a criminal for starving his own people? I guess starving Koreans is a crime only if you're Korean. If you're American, it's an act of humanitarian liberation. As for weapons of mass destruction madmen, I seem to recall that General Douglas MacArthur was relieved of his command by President Truman in that war precisely because he called for the atomic devastation of China and for separating the Korean peninsula from the Asian mainland by 4 or 5 atomic charges that would create a radioactive canal and stop the human flow from China. And why is MacArthur in the weapons of mass destruction rogues gallery? That's right. He's one of us. The same reason Israel is not lectured as a proliferator of weapons of mass destruction. As for the issue of biological warfare in Korea, this has not been conclusively proven beyond all reasonable doubts, but there is strong circumstantial evidence for it in North Korea and China. The Japanese medical officer, General Shiro Ishii, who was in charge of Project Maruta, the use of humans in biological warfare experiments in Manchuria, was known to be serving as an advisor to the U.S. biological weapons program, which in turn was rather a redaction of the Japanese biological weapons program known as Unit 731. The 731 system was known to have been deployed in active use in the Pacific theater of World War II, and highly toxic infected bugs were discovered in the Korean war fields after 1950 by Chinese troops. China at the time would not have had the capability of creating these, so the case for their being dropped from UN aircraft is very strong. When CNN tried to raise this issue in a documentary some years ago, the program was pulled with the lamest of excuses. No Mad Men season premiere here. But in their favor, no doubt the pressure was strong and coming from the highest official levels of censorship. So, what can knock upon my phone. Hello? Who? Tecumseh, the North American Indian chief who rose against the U.S., the indigenous bin Laden of your day. You're just sending this fire signal from the great hunting ground to warn America's new enemies, never to sign a treaty on the dotted line? You tried telling your fellow nationals that in your day, but they just took Western civilization at face value. But you were an enemy. Why should they deal honestly with you? An enemy turned friend is always just a sucker that you can never really trust anyway. In fact, the West knows better than even to trust itself. That's why there's a Security Council in the United Nations, and why you should never have membership.